Chapter 69. One day, yet east of Cheat, a light snow descending but scarce begun to stick, several of the party observe a girl chasing a chicken across the visto, when an odd thing happens, smack at the very centre, directly upon the line. The chicken stops, turns about till its head points west and tail east, and thenceforward remains perfectly still, seemingly fallen into a trance. The girl, after guarantees from both surveyors of the chicken's safety, moves on to other chores, whilst the day wheels over and down into dusk, and everyone in the crew comes by to have a look at the immobile fowl for as long as their obligations may allow. 'Tis well known, various ancient Pennsylvanians and Marylanders assure the surveyors, that placing a chicken upon a straight line'll send it nodding faster than ever a head put under a wing. The girl, returning to fetch her hen, agrees briskly. Chicken on a line? Thought everybody knew that. Dixon's idea of thrift is offended. Well, that's an attractive nuisance, isn't it? What's to keep them all from wandering in at any moment? Every clocker, he clear to Ohio and back to Chesapeake, lining up, going into a daze, presently thronging the visto. We could have a chicken's black hole of Calcutta here, except that, being in America, that all have to be removed gently, one by one, wasting days lest any fowl keeper whose stock has suffered even a feather's molestation call down among these lawyer-crazed people a vengeful pursuit after reimbursement upon a biblical scale that may beggar our mission. Mason groans. Shall wise doctors one day write history's assessment of the good resulting from this line, vis-a-vis the not-so-good? I wonder which list will be longer. Hark! Hark! You wonder? That's all? One of the enigmata of the invisible world is how a voice, unlocalized, may yet act powerfully as a moral centre. 'Tis the duck speaking naturally, or rather artificially. What about care? Don't you care? This visto is a result of what we have chosen in our lives to work at. Dixon bewildered that the topic is even coming up. Unlike some mechanical waterfowl, we have to what on our planet is styled work. Running lines is what surveyors do, explains Mason. Thank ye, Mason, says Dixon, and one of the few things stargazing's good for is finding out where you are exactly upon the surface of the earth. Put us two together with enough axemen, you have a sort of visto engine. Two clients wished to have a visto for one of their boundaries. Here we are. What other reason should we be together for? Thank ye, Dixon, says Mason. Later that night, and as he hopes, out of the duck's hearing, Mason says, I've been thinking about that chicken today. I know how lonely it gets out here, though aren't they said to be moody? Only a moment, dear colleague. Pray you, suppose right lines cause narcolepsy in all fowl, including the duck, Dixon exclaims. Why, aye, as in the Chinaman's refrain, There's all that bad energy flowing there night and day. Bad for us anyhow, but for the duck, who knows? Mightn't it rather be nourishing her, helping to increase her powers even uncommonly so? Exactly. 'Twould explain her relentless presence near it. Yes, the trick, should we wish to play it, would be to see her to her perfect location upon the line, symmetrically bisected. Facing east or west? What matter? She can turn upon a farthing however fast she goes. Pond larvae, offers Armand, feeling like a traitor. She still fancies them. A decoy. We need a painted wood representation of a duck. Tom Hines is the very man, sir. Hand him a pine log and he'll carve ye a quacker you can't tell from real even close enough to scare it away. It must look like an automatic duck, not a natural one. Tom does a better job on the decoy than he knows. Soon the duck is spending hours, stilled, companionably close to the expressionless object. One day, in an access, she throws herself upon it, going to beak bite its neck, and of course the truth comes out. Wood. For a moment it seems she will sigh, ascend, accelerate once more, back into her realm of velocity and spleen. Instead, well, it's a beginning, she says. It floats like a duck. It fools other ducks, who are quite sophisticated in these matters, into believing it a duck. It's a basis. Complexity of character might develop in time. Quiet, good-looking, over there to drop in on after a long tour of flying. And where there's one withal, why, there's more of the same. Famine to feast. Who needs bright conversation? And that's why, around these foothills, some nights when the wind is blowing backwards and the moon's just gone behind the clouds, you can hear the hum of her going by, due west, due east, in that forlorn comeback call, and then folks'll say, "'Tis the Frenchman's duck, out cruising the line." Why doesn't somebody set her free? The children of settlers up and down the line want to know. Go in, get her, bring her out. Not so easy. Anybody finds a chance to try it, she disappears. She's like a ghost who haunts a house, unable to depart. A ghost usually has unfinished business. What think you detains the duck? A simple and moderate desire for the orthogonal, in the opinion of Professor Vohm, which cannot allow her even the thought of life away from that much straightness, the leagues of perfect straightness, perfect alignment with Earth's spin, flying back and forth, east and west, forever. The buffeting of the magnetic currents, the ebb and flow of nations over the land surface, the pulse and breath of the solid planet, the dance with the moon, the entire great massive progress round and round the sun. For a while, after becoming a resident of the Visto, the duck accosts travellers for miles up and down the line, ever seeking Armand. For a chance at revenge, it is worth slowing into visibility, besides giving her an opportunity to chat. Here, producing from some interior recess a sheaf of notices in print, clipped from various newspapers and street bills. Here, Voila! With the flatteur and the tambourine player in the centre. 'Tis moi, moi! Listen to what Voltaire wrote about me to the Count and Countess de Gental. French that I'm not going to try to read. All right. Le Moret? Who's that? Some soprano? Fine. I'm a big-hearted sort of filly. The glory of France certainly knows how to share a stage. You think it was easy every night with those two musicians, listening again and again to that odeur? You'd think now and then a little Bezossi, at least. Any Bezossi would have done. Relief, forget it. Not in the rooms we worked. Took all my stage discipline not to start quacking along with those grand high C's. One admires the man, genius engineer, but his taste, musically speaking, runs from none to doubtful. The true humiliation came at the end of each exhibition, when Vaucanson actually opened me up and showed to anyone who wished to stare, any base mondaine, the intricate web within of wheels, levers, and wires, unto the last tiny piece of linkage, nay, the very falling plummet that gave me life, nowadays itself morphosed so as to fall without end. They pointed, tittered, sketched exquisitely in the air, indignity absolute. He would never allow anyone the least suspicion that I might after all be real. Inside me lay truth mechanical. Outside was but clever impersonation. I was that much his creature, that he owned the right to deny my soul. His undoing was in modifying my design, hoping to produce Venus from a machine, as you might say. My submission was not yet complete enough. In the years before the next war, as public tastes veered in quite another direction and we were left becalmed, each in the company of few but the other, his demands grew less and less those of a man of science. He wished rather to hear sounds of affection and contentment in his presence. He got nothing more abandoned than wing caresses, perhaps a beak bite, a limited repertoire. But all the same, one felt compromised. He wished to control utterly, not an automaton, but a creature capable of love, not only for drakes and ducklings, but for himself. The approach of his middle years, the winds blowing as from an untravelled north. 'Tis on their way back east for the last time that the duck learns to hold perfectly still in the air at any altitude and remain there whilst the earth spins beneath her. She understands that she may now shift north or south to any latitude she likes, without being restricted any more to the line and its visto. But she is curious about where else the parallel goes. She ascends one evening after mess, and as the party with their tents all go rolling away into the shadow, they in their turn watch her, poised above the last lit meridian, recede over the horizon and vanish. Next morning here she comes roaring in at well over 700 miles per hour, coasting to a smooth stop and settling upon the cook tent's peak with not a feather out of place. Interesting planet, is her comment. I have been o'er the foot of the Italian boot, close by Bukhara and Samarkand. I can't wait to do the equator. Ye have tapped into but 5 degrees of 360 20 minutes of a day it would cause you astonishment and distress to learn of your minor, though morally problematic part in. A global scheme! I knew it! Dixon beginning to scream. What did I tell thee? Get a grip on yourself, man, mutters Mason. What happened to we're men of science? And men of science, cries Dixon, may be but the simple tools of others, with no more idea of what they are about than a hammer knows of a house. Ah, sighs Euphemia, all too true. The life of an automaton cannot, however conceived, strike anyone as enviable. Excuse us, aunt, ventures Depew, but did we understand you to say... Don't get her started, Bray hisses. Have you, aunt? Athelma fiendishly pretending interest. Rarely shared the life of... Shared? Why, in my own student days, in far-off Paris, France, I was obliged to keep starvation off my sill by pretending to be an automaton oboe player. My manager, Signor Drivelli, actually under the statutes of the two Sicilies, we were man and wife, not only charged admission, but also took bets on the side as to how long I could play between breaths. Zabby, pleads Mr. Lespark, speak with her about this sometime, could you please, it being your family. What was your best time? Asks Athelma. Never went longer than 20 minutes or so, but I could have easily tootled on all night, the secret being to sneak charges of air in through your nose, using the cheeks as a plenum for storage, as 'tis in the bagpipes. The music written for oboe is notoriously lacking in places to breathe. The notes just keep coming, 16 or 32 of them, every time you tap your foot. Not to mention the embellishments you're expected to put in yourself, for no extra fee, of course. The principal reason so many of us go insane being not from forcing air into a small mouthpiece, but in all the sneakery and diversion of attention required to keep blowing. In India they understand how important the breath is, being indeed the soul in different form, and how dangerous it is to meddle unnaturally with the rhythms proper to it. As Dixon becomes possessed by the horizon, Hugh Crawford is seen to walk to and fro, shaking his head, presently muttering softly. Mason corners him behind a wagon. Out with it, sir. Things are too precarious here for you to be concealing your opinions from me. Not concealing, withholding, maybe. Mason, losing his composure, lunges for and attempts to strangle the guide. They slip and stagger in the newly fallen leaves. Very well, Mason. Off, off. Attend me. This is a mountain dulcimer that I put together by hand once, when there wasn't much else to do. And in a wild notescape, almost minor, almost Celtic, commences an uncommonly amazing hammering and plucking, when Mason appears soothed enough. Now, I've seen Mr. Dixon's ailment before, yes. With trappers, with traders, with rangers and strangers, the Frenchies out here call it Rapture de West, brother. Sooner or later it's going to take ya away to the sunset along with the rest. So 'tis, hey ye dirt farmers, I'm gone for the prairies and over the mountains and down to the sea. If I get back some day, though the world shine as morning, yet ever will sunsets be beckoning to me. But under the moon, Chestnut Ridge and Cheat behind them, and Monongahela to cross, into an overture of meadow to the horizon, lowlands become to them a dream whilst under a spell, the way it gives back the light, the way it withholds its shadows. Who might not come to believe in an eternal west, in a momentum that bears all away? Men are removed by it, and women from where they were, as if surrendered to a great current of westering. You will hear of gold cities, marble cities, men that fly, women that fight, fantastical creatures never dreamed in Europe. Something always to take and draw you that way. Mr. Crawford, puffing meanwhile upon an Indian pipe, whose bowl, finely carved of soft stone by a Quebec Frenchman he had dealings with years ago, depicts a female head of classical beauty, her locks spilling beyond obsessiveness, all blackened with fire and grease, smoked out for all those years, having held 1,000 stems, from reed stirred by the mists of Niagara to cane at the mouth of the Mississippi. You recall to me myself in my first days out here, up all night, going west by the way of the stars. It's said some have a gift for it, like dowsing, and can run true bearings indefinitely under the most obscured of skies. Many of Colonel Byrd's companions running the line twixt Virginia and Carolina possessed the gift. When the party split, with half going round the Great Dismal and half right across, becoming detained in that Cyprus purgatory for weeks, 'twas the westering certainty that got 'em through safe. I've even managed to keep my latitude for the odd few seconds, so I take an amateur's interest. And thus far, by my estimate, you are hardly the width of a pipe stem out. As to what draws Mr. Dixon, I don't mean to present it lightly. We say the westerings got him. And I also tell you this, so you'll know that when, here Mason draws a sharp breath, something requires an unpremeditated cessation to the line, well, Mr. Dixon may not be inclined to stop. He wouldn't take a chance with his... But the guide has his hand upon Mason's arm, motioning with his head as Dixon comes into view. He has been wandering among the tents and wagons, looking troubled, very tall and out of scale in the uncertain dinner-time light. By the time he's out of earshot again, it has occurred to Mason, "You said what? An unpremeditated cessation. Is there something else I should know?" There is, nor does it take long in coming. Mortality at last touches the expedition. William Baker and John Carpenter are killed by the fall of a single tree on September 17th, as Thursday. 'Tis possible they'd signed up together and worked together. Their names are entered together in Mr. McLean's records. The next week, Carpenter's is entered by mistake, to be followed by a trailing line over to a row of zeros. For days worked in the week. Mo must have forgot. So may the bookkeeper's page be haunted, a ghost entry. John Carpenter's soul lingering, William Baker's to appearance, having moved on. This is a disaster. Mason curled as a dying leaf, disposed to give it all up. You agree, don't you, Jeremiah? You know it doesn't happen. It never happens that two are killed in the fall of a single tree. Their people have them. They'll be safe. Too vexed and reassuring himself to see Mason's point. You were the one looking for a sign, weren't you? Well, there's your miserable sign. Why aren't you reading it? 'Twas a tall old chestnut. They set their wedges wrong, and then it fell where they hadn't guessed it would. What else, pray? Damned right, pray, snaps Mason. Somebody had better around here. They sit in the tent, coffee growing cold. Mason waiting for the sector to arrive. Dixon waiting for Mason to burst forth with, well, what's the fucking use, really? To which Dixon will have to come up with an answer and not take too much time either doing it. Geminity hath found a fleshless face. No second chance. 'Tis death that's won the race. Between the line in all its purity and what lay massed within the mortal tree. Timothy Tox, The Line. No question, beyond Cheat, they move in a time and space, apt one instant to the next, to stretch or shrink, as a chain's length may upon the clement page pass little noticed, whilst in an ambuscade may reckon as, perhaps, all or nothing. When the sector arrives, they set up upon a bluff overlooking Monongahela, and watch the culmination of stars and Lyra and Cygnus, correcting for seconds plus and minus of aberration, deviation, precession and refraction, whilst in cabins nearby the wives of the new hired axemen gather, and those axemen who may come through and out the back to take white maize whisky out of a tin cup. Soon as the party have stepped west of Monongahela, Indians of nations other than Iroquois begin showing up to have a look at them. The Delaware chief Catfish, his lady, and his nephew arrive in the first days of October, all dressed as Europeans might be, and confer apart with the Mohawks, exchanging strings of wampum with them. Stranger and native alike confess ignorance of Catfish's mission in these parts, far from his village, and as if disguised in coat, waistcoat, breeches, and cocked hat. Looking for business is how Hugh Crawford translates it, adding, it is usually best in these cases not to inquire too closely. A few miles on west, 8 Senecas, going south to fight the Cherokees, come and stay over in camp, obtaining powder of Mo McLean, along with some paint. Materials of war. I'm not sure we can write these off, Mason cautiously suggests to him. The commissary glares as if presented with an opening for some violence. Well, they're southern Indians, he explains instead. They're snakes down there, poisonous, no human feeling. Whereas these Senecas, well, they're our Indians. We live in, as off, the same forests. If we can help 'em along, Ever pays to have a friend or two out here, gents. And at the final station by Dunkard Creek, as Mason records in his memoranda for 1767, the venerable Prisquitom, prince of the Delawares and brother to their king, pays them a call, and is presently describing for them the great unbroken meadow of the west, whilst Indian visitors pass by in all directions, staring or amused, sometimes in drink as well, regardless of the hour, all figures relating to their daily ration of spirits, having been negotiable since the party crossed Monongahela. It's like Covent Garden on a Saturday night, Mason grumbles. What are we become? A show they must all see, or lose credibility among whatever Indians have for fops? I ought to just go over and inform that old coot. Mason, he's 86, and why should traffic not be brisk? These people freely travel an arrangement of high roads, connected upon a scale continental that nothing we know of in North Britain can equal, making us little different from the strollers who work the inns along the coaching roads of more civilized lands. Can't speak for thee, but I rather welcome all this mixed society, not as formal this way as it might become. Swinging his head westward. Heaven help us if we run out of whiskey. As it is, Mo's got distillers clear back the other side of Monongahela, working back shifts by the light of the moon, and wagons that do and don't make it through, all so that our guests here will be taken care of. Peace, merriment. Take joy of thy rude hurricano. Give no thought to what may lie beyond thy moment's mean horizon. Fatum in denario vertit. But don't let that stop you. Allow me rather to assume as well my own burden of worry, being a self-sacrificing gent in a curious sort of way. Mason, mind thy wig now, for these are all good lads. They drink but in moderation, no more riotously than in Wapping, I'm sure. Now I am entirely sedate, thank ye. Safest things to act insane, of course, Mr. Crawford advises. How's that? We style it doing a Chapman, a trader by that name, captured near Fort Detroit at the time of Pontiac's rising, famously having escaped execution by feigning to be mad. These folk respect madness. To them 'tis a holy state. As I told thee, Mason, nothing for thee to worry about. I'd noticed them stepping lightly round you. Hitherto, as if by conscious agreement, withdrawal into folly by the one surveyor would have unfailingly provoked an embrace of sobriety by the other. So, up till now, has the line been preserved day to day, from frenzied impulse as from reasoned reluctance, allowing it to proceed on its way unmolested. Here, as it draws to its last halt, if anywhere, might both gentlemen take joy of a brief holiday from reason. Yet, too busy, Mason insists, and far too cheerful for that, supposes Dixon. As the stars tell you where it is you must cut your path, so do the land and its rivers tell us where our tracks must go. Yet the stars, in their power. Mason's melancholia so advanced that he is not fully aware of sitting wrapped in a blanket, arguing religion with a Mohawk warrior with whom he is scarcely upon intimate terms. that only the mightiest God may command, deserve at least one small, respectful courtesy of allowing their line to cross, without a mark, your nation's own great path. Come, says Daniel. Eh? Dixon looking up from his pipe. Come where? Says Mason. Out on the path. We'll take a turn down toward Virginia and back again. Am I in condition for this? Inquires Mason of no one in particular. And what of these Catawbas I keep hearing about? Will we be allowed to smoke? Dixon wants to know. The Indian is gazing at them doubtfully. You must see what it is you believe you may cross so easily. Follow me, though I am not entirely pleased with my back to either of you. They proceed along Dunkard Creek, abandoning their short-term destinies to the possibly homicidal Indian. The forest life ever presenting mystery to them. Too much going on night and day. Behind every trunk, beneath every bush. How many new Pontiacs may even now be raising forces, planning assaults, perhaps in the market for a couple of English surveyors to style a casus belli and publicly torture before putting to death. Yah! Yet isn't this man entirely vouched for by Sir William Johnson, or actually said to be vouched for? Perhaps the first item of the Neo-Pontiacal uprising would be to put Johnson to death. Perhaps this has already occurred. So busy are the astronomers with these apprehensions that they nearly miss their guide's hand signal to slow down and approach with caution what lies ahead. The moon has not yet risen. The Indian steps off the path, motioning them to do the same. This is troubling. They've been this far up already. See what you nearly stepped on. He crouches and fleetly retrieves a long, slender though not easily broken sliver of something from the trail. Swamp cane. It doesn't grow up here. They gather and splinter it, catch and kill serpents, dip the points into the venom, set them on the trail aimed toward us. Having gathered as many of the deadly points as he can find, he bends close to a small patch of untravelled ground. Forgive me for what I must now beg you to bear at my hands. Carefully, he pushes each point into the earth, till only bits of the blunt ends remain. These Catawbas, Mason falling increasingly short of perfect nonchalance. How close are they, I wonder? Whoever set these, they weren't more than 2, and they were moving fast. The main body could be anywhere south of here. 'Twould be useful to know how far south, Dixon supposes. He means, let us go on, into sure ambuscado and death. Mason hastily. He's a bit, what do you people call it? Tapping his knob and twirling his finger beside it. Pray do not suppose all Englishmen to be quite so free of care. By the time we get anywhere to tell anyone, they'll be someplace else. We'd better get back. For now, say nothing more, and try to move quietly. Mr. Barnes is troubled at the depth of the silence that reigns. No longer frets the intemperate jay, he mutters, withal the siskin chirpeth not. Captain, what the fuck is going on? At either end of the warrior path, The heat, the agitation, the increasing tension grow. Never in memory, they are assured by their Mohawk escort, have Iroquois and Catawba each wished so passionately the other's destruction. Any new day may bring the unavoidable descent. With Indians all round them, the warpath a-tremble with murderous hopes, its emptiness feeling more and more unnatural as the hours tick on into the end of day, as the latent blades of warriors press more closely upon the membrane that divides their subjunctive world from our numbered and dreamless indicative. Apprehension rising, axemen deserting, the ghosts of 55 growing hourly more sensible and sovereign. As unavenged fires foul the dusk, unanswered mortal cries travel the forests at the speed of wind. Ah, Christ! Besides west, where else are they heading, those few with the clarity to remain? They both dream of going on, unhindered as the halt dream of running, the earth-bound of flying. Rays of light appear from behind clouds. The faces of the bison up close approach The faces of the bison upon close approach grow more human, unbearably so, as if just about to speak. Rivers run swifter and wider, till at last the party halts before one that mayn't be crossed, even by the sturdiest bateau, that for miles runs deeper than the height of a Conestoga wagon. Upon that final bank, an Indian will appear silently and lead the party past a forested bend to a great bridge, fashioned of iron, quite out of reach of British or, for that matter, French arts, soaring over to the far shore, its highest part. Whenever there are rain clouds, indeed lost to sight, constructed long ago by whatever advanced nation lived upon the river's opposite side. May we cross? Asks Dixon. May we not cross? Asks Mason. Alas, replies the son of the forest, not yet, for to earn passage there is more you must do. Why show it to us at all? Wonders Dixon. If I did not, your great road through the trees would miss it. You move like wood borers inside a post in a great house, in the dark, eating and shitting, moving ever into the wood and away from your shit, with no idea at all what else lies without. In the forest, comments Mr. Crawford, everyone comes round in a circle, sooner or later. One day your foot comes down in your own shit. There, as the Indians say, is the first step upon the trail to wisdom. They wake. End of chapter.